I think about what is the theme of this episode. Based on my experience, I kind of know basically what keywords are relevant. And I'll just try to naturally put those in. But if you're thoughtful about what the title of the video is going to be, that can impact your description. That impacts the words that you're using in your intro also.
Most hosts never achieve the results they hoped for. They're falling short on listenership and monetization, meaning their message isn't being heard and their show ends up costing them money. This podcast was created to help you grow your listenership and make money while you're at it. Get ready to take notes. Here's your host, Adam Adams.
Welcome back to the podcast on podcasting. Today I'm joined with someone I've known for almost a year. I think I probably met you, Mark, like around a year ago when Clubhouse was like a big thing. By the way, are you still on Clubhouse this late after the game?
Oh, yeah. And Clubhouse has definitely calmed down a bit. Like for a few months, it was just crazy growth across all these different platforms, networking. But I'm still active. I still host a room every Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern. And I'm still meeting amazing people. So I still think it's a valuable place to spend time.
Cool. So you do that every Saturday at what time again?
10 a.m. Eastern. It's called Grow Your Podcast, to grow your podcast room. So we do like a live Q&A for podcasters.
Nice.
And it's been cool. Just last week, Cliff Ravenscraft came in for about an hour. And so that was amazing. Just a whole slew of great people join in. And so it's a lot of fun.
Awesome. So we'll make sure to link to that. So you'll have a link to my team before this airs, I'm sure. One thing about Mark Savant, who I've got on the podcast, he supports podcasters. Similar like Grow Your Show, we help podcasters, but there is one thing that he does that I have like almost no good experience doing. I've done YouTube. I've tried to edit YouTube. I've tried to grow my YouTube, and it only gets to like 100 to 300 subscribers. And we're talking like maybe 100 downloads. And so I've always struggled with YouTube and what to do with that video content. He and his team do a really good job at it. In fact, like his YouTube channel has over 600,000 views compared to my 1,000, I'm sure, views. So 600 times, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to have him on, is just kind of pour into you. I'll pick his brain organically on the things that I'm curious about. I'm wondering, what is the strategy? How do you do it? How do you grow it? And so if you want to grow a YouTube channel around your podcast, you could definitely hire Mark Savant Media, which is his company. I love that you just named it after yourself. It makes it so much easier. His podcast as well is called After Hours Entrepreneur. Mark, can you clarify, is your YouTube channel just branded the same, After Hours Entrepreneur?
So the YouTube channel is called Mark Savant Media, business page. And we'll talk about it a little bit, but I have different types of videos there, which I think is part of the fun of YouTube, is experimenting with different things, finding out what people really resonate with. So yeah, Mark Savant Media.
Here's something that me and my team have been trying. Like in the past, we thought it would be a great idea to edit and produce the full length video of like people's interviews and put it up. And those didn't really get very much traction, like the full 40-minute. And it could be how we're titling it. It could be our thumbnail. It could be our marketing strategy, or it could be that the longer ones aren't as popular on YouTube, or we're just doing something wrong. But I'm curious because about a year ago, about the time we met, it's kind of funny. Around that time, we started doing something where we're trying to pull out these shorter clips, but it's of the same video. Like you take the entire thing and you do like 30 seconds to like 6 minutes is what I've put as the absolute max. And here's the reason why the 6 minutes max. When I'm late at night and I'm actually on YouTube, it's only when it's midnight and I'm thinking, it's midnight and I want to go to bed at 12:05. So I'm just going to watch one 5-minute video. And then I'll just do that all night until 7 o'clock in the morning and never sleep. But it's only these 6 minutes or shorter. So I was like, hey, team, that's what you got to do. But unfortunately, it's not even doing better than what it was before. So what kind of lengths are you doing? Why are you doing it? It maybe is my intro too long. What do you think there?
Yeah. So YouTube
is
amazingly powerful. It's amazingly powerful. I think it's the second largest search engine on the web. And that doesn't mean that you should just be throwing spaghetti against the wall, just throwing a bunch of full-length videos on there, and I think you have the right ideas. How long are people watching the videos? The other thing I love about YouTube is it gives you extremely detailed analytics, everything from how well your thumbnails are performing to how long people are watching videos to when they're subscribing, which videos they're subscribing on, comments. That's another thing I like about YouTube is you can get comments really quickly. It gives you a much better feel for what your community is doing. Whereas with my podcast, I say, hey, everyone shoot me an email, and I just don't get as much response typically as I will on a YouTube video, for example. I will say this, that I'm always looking for different ways that I can repurpose content, right? So like an interview like we're doing right now, how can I turn this into multiple pieces of valuable content? And one of the overlaps that I think is really interesting now is short form vertical video. And what I mean by that, I'm talking about TikTok videos, I'm talking about Instagram Reels, and I'm talking about YouTube Shorts. YouTube Shorts are a really powerful way of bringing new people into your atmosphere, making more people aware of your podcast. And again, that's really a YouTube Short is just a video that's less than 60 seconds and is fully vertical, meaning it takes up the full screen of a smartphone. And it's just taken over the industry by storm. And it's one of the best ways to get free views on YouTube. But again, if your video is pretty good, you can post it on Instagram Reel. And all of a sudden, you've got content that can work on multiple platforms at once.
If you're doing these shorts, what's a length that you're going for? Is this 10 seconds, 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes?
So that's another great question. So the answer is it depends, right? And typically, I think for the normal podcaster, and I typically work with business owners who are building out a business and just want to make sure they have a unique way of continuing to keep in touch with their fans, their audience, and their market. But typically, I find that when you're trying to inform someone and educate someone, it takes longer than 15 seconds to do that. So most of the videos that I'm doing for YouTube Shorts are around 45 seconds to 60 seconds.
Okay.
That said, Instagram Reels for some accounts is still at 30 seconds and under. They just extended me to 60 seconds. So I don't know exactly.
Wait. You get longer than other people get on the Reels?
Somehow I got 60 seconds. The Reels is really weird too. Like there'll be days where we log in and we can't even post a Reel, and then we have to all anyway. I think I just kind of want to go back. I just kind of want to go back to the beginning as to like why you should even be on YouTube in the first place and why I got started on YouTube in the first place. And quite frankly, it's because I was learning a lot. I went to college, university, bachelor's degree. I was in the insurance industry for over a decade. I'm all about learning new things. And as I started segueing in to digital media about podcast production 4 years ago, I was learning so much on YouTube that I was paying attention. And then what happened, and I'm sure you get this too, Adam, you start getting questions from people. People start asking you the same questions over and over again. I said, why do I keep answering the same questions over and over again? I'm just going to make YouTube videos that answer the question. And then when somebody asks me the question, I'll just forward them to a YouTube video. And that's really, to me, the way that really helped my YouTube channel take off, if you would. And that's how we got the huge views, thousands of views, 500,000 views, etc.
Can you go into more detail about that? So here's what I'm hearing so far. Some things that you like about YouTube is the analytics, the comments, and you mentioned the different thumbnails and how they're performing. Can I ask you, did you mean that you can make one YouTube video and basically split test it with different thumbnails?
Well, absolutely you can. You'll need to use a tool like TubeBuddy to do A/B testing on the same video.
Okay.
But even as you start to post different videos with different thumbnails, you're going to start to get an idea of what we call your click-through rate. How often are people seeing an image and clicking on it? And you can start to just kind of anecdotally see trends there. But using a program like TubeBuddy to A/B test, 1 week on one thumbnail with the blue color, next with the yellow color, one with a face, one without a face, you can start to play around with what is really going to work with your audience.
Interesting. And then you mentioned that one thing that you're all about is repurposing content, and you do that mostly with vertical. Can I ask you why vertical? Why most videos are horizontal? Like we're recording and this has video, it's automatically horizontal. So like why vertical? And secondly, how do you like convert something that's normal being like horizontal to vertical, or am I misunderstanding and you're doing something different?
Well, we're always testing new things, but as of now, Q4 2021, the reason why vertical is something we put a large emphasis on is because the reach, you're just getting a lot of extra reach, meaning you're able to put your videos in front of more people. These short form vertical videos are really being pushed right now. right?
Okay.
Midway 2022, it might trim down. We don't exactly know. And that's one of the reasons why you want to listen to shows like the After Hours Entrepreneur and the podcast on podcasting, because we're keeping up with the trends so you don't necessarily have to. So that's why we're really focused on the vertical short form. And there's different ways that we're producing them. Okay. One way that we do it is just in these interview style videos, just like we're doing right now. And typically what I do, Adam, is there's going to be certain points in the interview where I'm like, whoa, Adam just dropped a bomb. Like, that's really, really good. I like that. And I'll just jot down a little note, like a timestamp note on a piece of paper. And then I can come back to that on the back end with my team and say, hey, this is my question. This is Adam's answer. Let's clean it up. Let's repurpose it in a way that's compelling.
So if you're recording that and it's like on Zoom or some of these other platforms that have basically 2 horizontal videos, and then on top of that, it'll naturally put them side by side. How are you turning that into like a vertical thing for reels and shorts?
Well, to be frank, at this point, I've got about 3 video editors on my team. So they have secrets that I'm not privy to. But generally what I would do back in the day when I was editing video after video after video after video, I can't tell you how many videos I've edited. But what I would basically do is I would split the video into like 2 tracks, 2 layers, and I would just layer one on top of the other, and it just kind of tweak with the settings. Yeah. A great example of someone that does this, Halataha, does a really good job of keeping that vertical format live. Also, LinkedIn is starting to allow these vertical style videos. The formatting is a little bit different, but all the platforms are getting into this. Also worth noting, if it's a vertical video, it also makes for a really good Instagram story. So you can start to see where if you're able to repurpose a decent or even a great vertical style video, it can start to get really pushed out. And I also want to share another strategy that I've been playing with, and I find that it's really effective for me from a time standpoint, right? So what I like to do is think of a concept for the day. So one of the things that I do in Clubhouse is we'll have like a concept or a theme, whether that's perseverance or best apps or best shows, etc. And then what I'll do is I'll take all that input from that Clubhouse room, all these great pieces of advice, and then before the next week, I'll just sit down in front of a webcam, in front of my camera, and I'll just riff. I'll do a solo episode where I explain key concepts. So the concept is 12 different ways that you can persevere, get sleep, exercise, get a mentor, get a mastermind, right? And so I'll record, let's say a 10, maybe a 15-minute video, just me talking to the mic. And then my team can go and they can say, all of a sudden that's 15 different micro vertical style videos and a video that stands on its own that's about 15 minutes long for YouTube, and a podcast episode that's good for about 15 minutes long. And we can create great carousels from that. So you can start to see that using a strategy like that and be a little bit more thoughtful before you even hit record could really help with the repurposing process.
What's a carousel?
So a carousel, also affectionately known as a slider, is very popular on Instagram and on LinkedIn. And basically what it means is you're uploading a series of digital images that all make sense together. Yeah. Okay. And so if someone likes it, they're like, how can you get more downloads? I want to know. And then it can start kind of swiping left. Yeah. Got it.
Cool.
But again, the reason I really like that kind of like that solo recording style is it makes it really easy for my team to lay out that carousel, because they have on paper an outline of the episode, and it makes it really easy. It makes it really clear with my team, or if you work with an agency, it just really helps to communicate well with the back end production when you are a little more thoughtful on the front end.
Does your agency do that for the business owners you work with?
We do. Cool. Yeah.
Cool. And then you started to say that people kept asking you the same question over and over again. And that's kind of like, why did you start YouTube? It was just to kind of help you so that you didn't have to respond and basically say the same thing repeatedly. And so I'm curious, like, where was the balance in, there might have been 6 questions, but you might have wanted 100 YouTube videos or something like that?
Well, I think it really starts, and I love what Sean Cannell says from Think Me. He says, just hit record. And you just hit record and you start piling on. And I think more so than in anything, when it comes to YouTube, this is also really important for podcasting as well, is when you're trying to decide what your episode's going to be about, you want to keep it in line with what it's going to be about, right? And that's one of the challenges I've had with Clubhouse rooms, because sometimes we'll have 10 different topics. And when you start bouncing around topic to topic, someone's like, okay, I logged on because I wanted to know about thumbnails. but now you're talking about Instagram stories and there's a disconnect there. So I think more so than anything, when you create a video for YouTube, you want to make sure that the thumbnail, the title, the description, all the tags are all coherent with what the video is about, and that video sticks to a really specific theme. Like you said, with a 6-minute video, you can get really granular on that topic. So I think that's something important. And that's one of the things that we talked, by the way, everyone, Adam did his homework. And when we sat down here today, before we even started, he said, Mark, I want to talk about YouTube in today's episode. Is that cool if we really focus on YouTube? I say, it's great. Let's focus on one thing and then try to go as deep as we can in this session.
Yeah. So with video content, one of the things that I'm hearing is repurpose. Another thing that I'm hearing is that some of the things that we do and we can create like micro content, it can go in many different places and really add that exposure, add those eyeballs, add those earballs as well. You're putting this across reels and shorts and stories and things like that. But one of the interesting things that I even did hear you say is that some of these platforms are going to be 2 minutes. Some of them are 30 seconds. Some of them are 1 minute. So out of curiosity, like if the listener's thinking that they want to repurpose things, how do they know how long to make the thing and where to put the thing?
That, my friend, is the $1,000 question, right? And so I just want to kind of back it up a little bit, right? Because really what my agency does is we figure all that for you. So you don't have to worry about, does it have to be this length or that length? Like that's what our agency does. And that's one of the reasons why I think it's important to have an agency that keeps you up to date. So you can focus on your business, you can focus on revenue, driving sales, where we can focus on the boring stuff like what is the aspect ratio for an Instagram reel this month, right? But just to kind of back it up a little bit, I think it's generally speaking, if you're a do-it-yourself or if you're going in and you're really saying, I really want to focus on this, I think what you really want to do is you want to focus on 2 platforms. One for your long form content, one for your short form, right? And the long form, like a longer YouTube video, is really effective at delivering, a long form piece of information, educate, etc. Whereas your short form is all about engagement, right? Which banner do you like better? Or which guest would you like to see on the show, right? This is the stuff that's really hard sometimes to get with YouTube and with your podcast. So again, I think it's really important to focus on 2. It can make it much more manageable when keeping up with not just the aspect ratio and the specifics, but also with all the DMs that you're getting. Like, I don't know about you, but it's really hard when like, okay, now I got to check my LinkedIn DMs, now I got to check my Instagram. And then eventually you're just like, I'm just completely exhausted. So
a couple things. Number one, I'm hearing that we need to focus on 2 different platforms, and one platform will use more long form and the other platform we're using short form. Is that what you were saying, or did I misunderstand?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Although for me, I do kind of put YouTube and your podcast RSS feed in that same category, just because if you're recording the correct way, it is very powerful and can be very valuable on both sides with very limited adjustments. You can make a great video that also is great for your audio experience.
Okay.
But again, the reason I want to kind of lean into this a little bit, Adam, is like when someone listens to your podcast, it's really hard to get feedback, right? And that's why the short form platform is important, whether that's Instagram. I focus a lot on LinkedIn, but having a place where you can quickly engage with your audience, drum up leads, et cetera, et cetera.
So if you don't mind going deeper into this topic, so I make sure that I understand and the listener understands as well. When you say long form, do you mean like an audio or a video that you're recording either by yourself or with someone else that's going to last longer than, let's say, 6 minutes? Or is there a different definition that you mean by what long form is? And then I probably have some follow-up questions after.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head there, Adam. I mean, long form is kind of subjective, but I think whether that's 5 minutes or 30 minutes or Joe Rogan style 3 hours, like those I would all consider long form. When I think of short form, I'm thinking of minute or less than 2 minutes, right? Because really on social media in general, I'm generalizing here, videos that are long don't do well. So really when I'm working with my team to make clips, to repurpose clips, I try to keep them to under 1.5 minutes, like is our hard, fast rule.
Okay.
That we try to implement. Yeah.
And that's when you do that short form and you're doing it on different social media platforms such as Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn. When you do that, and you're trying to keep it like 90 seconds, A, are you putting the same piece of content in multiple different places? And B, what does the copy or the script that you write around the video look like? So two-part question.
Yeah.
You can answer either one if I shouldn't have asked two.
So let's start with the first question, right? Like once you shoot your long form, you start repurposing it or using the same repurposed content on multiple platforms. And the general answer is yes, right? And there's multiple reasons for that. I have a team of 6 people and they're all doing different things, handling different responsibilities, and there is some overlap, but I find that it's easiest for us to work on one piece of content. We basically work on like one piece of content per day. Today is going to be a carousel. Today is going to be a video, and we punch it out over multiple platforms. Although I am starting to really reassess the way that our commitment to quality, if you would. Over the past, I've been content, but now I'm kind of taking a step back and saying, maybe we should just get hyper-focused on a couple different platforms. And this is because of conversations with greats like Roberto Blake and Erin on Demand and some of these great creators, but Sonny Leonard-Doozy. Anyway, I'm kind of getting a little ahead of myself, but generally speaking, trying the same thing on different platforms, I don't think there's a problem with that. You might need to reformat. You might need to use different hashtag strategies, things of that nature. Tagging is a little bit different. But generally, if I take out like a 1-minute clip, we'll use the same clip on multiple platforms.
Okay. And how about the copy that you're putting with it? Is it supposed to be long? Is it supposed to be short? Is it supposed to have questions and ask for engagement? Or what does that look like usually?
Yeah. So this is a great question. It does depend on the platform, some platforms, and it depends on the person too. Different people have different opinions on this. I think that there's 3 components, right? Every piece of copy should have 3 components. First off, the first component is you got to have a hook. Something that's going to make someone stop the scroll. They're going to stop scrolling through Instagram or LinkedIn, and they're going to stop because you put some words together that make them stop. And that can be, I like something like a quote. Maybe it's a bold statement, right? Maybe that is a compelling question, right? So I start out with some sort of hook, then I go into a short explanation of that hook, and then I end it typically with some sort of call to action, right? And that can be leave a comment below. What are your thoughts? Podcast episode here, etc. Again, there's no one right answer to this, but that's the way I structure my posts. Hook, content, call to action.
Yeah. For my listeners, they probably heard me say hook, story, offer a lot.
Sure.
Hook, story, offer, hook, story, offer. And I agree 100%. It's something to stop the scroll. And then it's basically what you want to tell them. And then it's what you want them to do. Is that how you look at it as well?
That's exactly right. And depending on the platform, there might be more in the middle, right? That story section that you mentioned. So like an email, don't get me started on people putting way too much text in emails, but typically in a social media post, I'll have like 1 paragraph when it comes to the content. And for a email, I might put 2 or 3 paragraphs. Like I get a little bit crazy. I put extra words.
I go crazy with 3 paragraphs.
We maybe go from 1 or 2 sentences to like 5 sentences. We get a little wild there. But I think that's important. And actually, just the other day, I think it's important that we're always trying new things. And I had Cliff Ravenscraft on the show, who's an amazing podcaster. And before I said in the email and in the Instagram posts and stuff I was putting out to promote it, I said, warning in all bold letters, all capital. After this, you'll never see podcasting the same. And I had a few people that reached out to me and are like, Mark, I hate warnings. I didn't think I would like it, but I actually liked it. So cool. It's kind of interesting where sometimes something that makes someone angry or upset is actually an interesting way to kind of flip the script, so to speak. For sure. It's like drawing your line in the sand, getting attention. That's a great hook. Warning. Yeah. It's like, wait, what is he talking about? Even if you're already rolling your eyes and you don't like warnings, it's like a train wreck. You can't not look at it. You got to see what it's about at least. So you might be upset, but then you might gain a little bit of value from it or be glad that you looked at it. When you talk about, I think hook, story, and call to action, or hook, short explanation, and call to action, what types of calls to action do you use with you and your clients that you have found effective? And here's part of my question. If you're doing it for them and it is requiring engagement so that they are going to the DMs or they have to reply to comments,
is that too much for some of your clients to have to be like involved in replying to it? So really curious about that. What's a good call to action for some of these posts, and how do you manage it with some of your clients?
It's another great question. And I think that more so than anything, it's good to try different calls to action. And one of the, I think, really common mistakes that people have in their call to action, they say, download here, subscribe now, follow me, that sort of thing, right? But I'm putting together calls to action. I'm either doing one of two things. I'm either selling the reader on, you want to click this. This is good for you. You clicking this is going to save you time. It's going to save you money. It's going to educate you. And I think more often than not, this happens all the time. People will say like, hey, subscribe to my podcast so I can get more downloads. That would be great for me, right? Or thank you for leaving a review. And leaving a review is a good call to action. But I think it's important that you're selling everything on the value to the audience or the value to you. One of my clients I'm working with has a show that's all about clean energy and solar energy and whatnot. And he can handle calls to action a little bit differently, right? It's not necessarily because that's a movement. That's something that's happening globally. That's not just, let me help you make some money and I'll have you. That's, let's save the planet. So there's a different aspect to the calls to action. They're going to work with that audience. But before I move on from this point about calls to action and links, if I'm putting links, like link to a podcast episode or to YouTube, I never put it in the actual post itself. I'll put that in the comments. That'll be the first comment, right? It's my understanding that these magical, mysterious algorithms don't like links in the actual post themselves. And one of the ways to get around that is to put links in comments. So I've been told these algorithms are very mysterious, but so a couple quick calls to action tips there.
Man. Okay. So I got one of them. I might've gotten two of them if the second one is about links. The first one is basically the reader, the listener, the follower wants to know what's in it for them. They want to know what is the value to them, WIIFM, everybody's favorite radio station, and not what's in it for the host, not what the host is going to get out of it, not that the host gets more listeners, not that the host gets XYZ. So that was the first thing that I heard you say was good for calls to action on promoting the videos that you do or promoting your podcast. Was the second one that you don't want to put a link in there?
Yep, I would say that. I think that's important. You have a call to action like fresh episode out now, and then you put like a link below or something like that. I think that's a good call to action. I find that sometimes tricking people into having a call to action, but not really making it clear that it's a call to action, right? So like maybe you'll challenge someone. And a challenge could be something like, how many hours of sleep do you get per night or something like that, right? It doesn't necessarily need to be like, leave a comment below, but it's maybe getting someone involved, sharing something that's going on with them personally. Another thing that I like doing is asking your audience to be involved in the show itself, in the creation of the show itself. And this I like to do with clients who are either rebranding or relaunching or we're launching a new show. Basically, we're kind of like refreshing something. And I got this from Amy Porterfield, who knows what she's doing. And what she'll do, shout out to Pat Flynn too for the strategy. So what you'll do is you'll post up like 3 or 4 or 5 different templates or different show arts or a different saying. Maybe you're working on a different punchline. You put a few different things together and say, which one do you guys like? Hey, audience, which image do you like the best? That's a way of getting people, again, more engaged, more interested in what you're doing. People like to have their opinions heard.
Yeah, they do. Human beings love their opinions. What is it? I'm just losing. I'm thinking transcription, but that is not the word for it. You know how on a lot of videos, you might have, the closed captions underneath the subtitles. With those subtitles, when do you use them and when do you not use them for the different lengths and on the different platforms?
We embed the subtitles or the closed captions. We embed those in basically every social media video because most people on social media have the volume off because they're in the restroom, they're in the bathroom, they're on a break, maybe they're in a public area. And so I think it is important to add subtitles to video clips. Listen, if you can't do it because you're bottlenecked on time, that doesn't mean don't post the video, right? You can always improve. But if you could add subtitles to those clips, that's a big win. On YouTube, you can also upload your subtitles to the video itself, and it kind of combines it to the video. You actually do that in post-production with YouTube. Okay. So basically you upload your video and there's another option to upload your SRT or your subtitle file. YouTube also creates subtitles automatically for you, which is another way that you can get subtitles added. again, a lot of different things kind of unwind there. But while we're on this topic, Adam, I think this is another important concept when it comes to YouTube, podcast as well, is that every word that you say, everything that comes out of your mouth, all that audio is transcribed. All these systems are transcribing those words. And they're using the words that come out of your mouth to show your video to the right people. This is especially true on YouTube. So I'm always trying to find different ways where I can greet people naturally or welcome people naturally to a new video while also being very focused on the keywords in the search engine, the words that are coming out of my mouth, particularly in the first 30 seconds. I want to have the words that are coming out of my mouth connect with both the description, with the title, with the tags that are used throughout that video. So getting a little advanced here, but just know that everything that you say in a video is actually being transcribed and used to send your video to the right place.
So I love that you do that intentionally. Is there a way that we can be better at it? Like if we've never done that before, I've not done that before, and I don't think that the listener probably has either. If that's where we are, what are some tips and tricks to helping us to be able to be using the right keywords, especially in the first 30 seconds, as you said?
Another great question, and something that I was actually talking to Roberto Blake about this the other day, who's a big YouTuber, and he actually takes the opposite approach. He just doesn't worry about it at all, right? He just goes in supernatural, very natural, not supernatural, but very natural. Although his presence on screen is supernatural. Roberto, I see you. But then I had another great YouTuber on the show, Justin Brown from Primal Video, and he said every video that he does is to a T. That intro is thought out before he even hits record, right? And so for me, what I do is I try to think about what is the theme of this video, what's the theme of this episode. Based on my experience making YouTube videos the last 4 years, I kind of know basically what keywords I'm in, what keywords are relevant, and I'll just try to naturally put those in. But again, I think that if you're thoughtful about what the title of the video is going to be, that can impact your description, that impacts the words that you're using in your intro also.
Okay, so it has to be congruent, and that's what I think that I'm hearing. When we're doing YouTube, we've got to have a title that is on point. We've got to have maybe a subtitle that's on point. The thumbnail needs to be in that same realm, and the first 30 seconds also need to be. Is that what I'm hearing? In a
perfect world, yes. And one of the things that you can absolutely do or be thoughtful about with your YouTube videos. So let's say, for example, you're doing an interview like this, Zoom style, Riverside FM style. You're recording a video. You're not really thinking about what your first few words are going to be typically when you're introducing your guest or something like that. So what you can do is after your interview, just record a short intro. Just record a brief intro, right? And I love to do this right after an interview is done, while the interview is fresh in my mind. I always try to walk away with 3 core concepts. And it's kind of at that time where I'm already going to have an idea of what the keywords are going to be. I might not know the exact title, but I still know that. So just as an example, the title of this video might be Growing Your Podcast with YouTube or something like that, right? And then when you record that short intro right after this, you record your brief intro, you could say something like that. Super thrilled to have you here today. We're joined by Mark Savant, and we're going to help you bring your podcast to YouTube. Something like that, right? And so you're using keywords YouTube and podcast within the first 10 seconds or so.
Yeah.
While also not sounding like a robot, because it's YouTube. It's about you. It's not about robot tube, right?
Not robot tube.
It's not robot tube, not yet.
One key takeaway that the listener, I hope, is writing down or has written down is that you mentioned that a good time to do the introduction of the episode is right after the episode. You'll have that interview, and then right after, before it leaves your mind, while it's still fresh in the mind, and maybe even on the same recording, like with you and me today, we'll get done, you'll jump off, and I might just stay on and instruct my editor, this is going to be the intro, or I might pause it and write it for a second, and then just like say what that intro is. I think that's huge and mostly because a lot of people, they do it separately. Like they go and listen to the entire thing again. I think honestly, that's just too much time. If you can do it while it's fresh on your mind, I think that's a really good time.
Yeah, absolutely right. I can say that the quality of my intros and the time that I've saved by recording it when it's fresh, massive, 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 massive. It's just a massive deal. Although I will say that I do go back and re-listen to episodes after they've gone through production. So I'll go and I'll watch it back on YouTube to say, this image sucked. We got to fix this. Or the audio here wasn't good. I think that's important too, that you're actually consuming your own content. And if you find your content boring, probably want to do something about that, right? Other people probably do too. But don't be too hard on yourself.
Yeah. Quick question, a couple follow-ups on the intro. There's two different intros. If we're going to talk about intro, there's two different intros. One intro is this pre-recorded intro that oftentimes has some music and oftentimes is a voiceover artist doing that intro, but we're talking about a different type of intro. Can you give us more info on like what is this intro and how it's different from like that pre-recorded, sometimes voiceover artist?
Yeah. This is something I've been really thoughtful about recently. I went back and I listened to about 100 different intros of the top business podcasts. They're all different. Spoiler alert, y'all. They're all different. There's not one right formula that works. So, however, that being said, my preference is that you give some sort of customization or expectation at the front. That's what I like to do. So, particularly on the podcast, because my YouTube intro is different from my podcast intro, but particularly on my podcast, I like to give like 3 key takeaways like, hey, After Hours Entrepreneurs, welcome back to the show. In today's episode, I want you to think about these 3 things. We're talking about YouTube, we're talking about how to repurpose, and we're talking about saving time. These are really important concepts. So if this is for you, listen on, let's go. So that's one intro. One of the things that we do on YouTube that's a little bit different is we'll take, again, remember I was talking about like a key clip, something throughout the episode that I thought was really valuable. We'll take out a brief clip from the guest and we'll just bring that to the front. Bring that to the front. You know,
so you don't do that on YouTube?
Not on all the videos. No.
Okay.
No.
Cool.
It depends, Adam. I've just like, we're always trying different things.
Yeah.
And again, there's no one right answer. Although one of the things I did recognize when I was doing this intro review, if you would, just about almost every single intro had music in it, which I thought was interesting.
Okay. Almost all of them have music. Is that going to be like the original theme music for the show, or are people doing other clips?
Just that, right? They almost always have some sort of music overlay, theme music, branded music, just about every single one, which I thought was interesting because I've recorded about 175 episodes of the After Hours Entrepreneur podcast, and I went about 130 episodes with no music, maybe even 150. Because I was like, I don't want to worry about it. It wastes time. I don't want to do it. And then I started, well, everybody else is doing it, so I might as well hop on the bandwagon. But I think in general, when it comes to an intro, there's no one right way to do it. But I think that one thing that's really important is making a promise to your listener about what the episode's going to be about, and then keeping that promise.
I love that. I love that. When I have a new client, I say, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them. And I also say, and then tell them what you told them. So like in the beginning, it's like, today we're going to be talking about YouTube. And then during the interview, it's like, we actually talk about YouTube and we talk about ideas. And then we'll just sum it up, a few of the key takeaways, and then jump off. One of the reasons why I like you said, give them the promise in the beginning, keep the promise. One of the reasons why I like that is most of us are doing our podcast for our company. Like I'm doing this podcast about podcasting because I serve podcasters. And I think it's important that if we give a promise, we fulfill the promise. And then what I do is at the end is I prove that we fulfilled the promise. I think that helps subconsciously somebody to know, hey, I can work with this person because they do what they say they're going to do. And I think that's a takeaway for other podcasters. Tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. And then they're more likely to, then your listener is more likely to know that they can hire you if you're a consultant or coach, or if you say that you're going to have an event, they believe you because you've proven that time and time again through each and every episode.
Well said. It's kind of funny. This is something I've been thinking a lot about recently, as well as the psychology of a show and of your brand and the colors and the music and the vibe and the guests. And there's just so much science to the psychology of human beings. And I couldn't agree. I haven't thought about it that way, but you're exactly right. If you're going to give a promise and you keep the promise and you just reiterate, we kept the promise, great way of letting people know when you work with me, I'm going to do what I say. And I will say, I actually want to riff on this for just a minute, because one of the challenges, I think, if you're in the consulting field or if you're trying to build an agency or something of the like, is a lot of clients are very unsure. They're just not sure. So any small thing you can do to just relay that my brand matters, I want you to walk away happy, those little things add up.
Yeah.
Same with YouTube. The little things add up. And I think if you continue to do the little things right, if you start and you continue doing little things right, it can snowball. It can absolutely snowball.
So what do you think about somebody who they go and talk about clickbait and they know how important it is just for somebody to click on that video? What do you think of people that have that clickbait? They did a really good hook. I mean, the hook works. It's going to make you click on it, but it doesn't necessarily deliver on the message. What do you think about that, especially as it relates to YouTube?
Well, YouTube is awesome for this, because on YouTube, you can see a specific drop-off point where your viewers are clicking the video. They're watching for 7 seconds, 20 seconds, a minute. You can see the exact point where people drop off. And YouTube actually highlights it for you, say, you lost viewers right here. And then you can go back and you can watch that clip. You could try to figure out what went wrong there. Is that maybe where the music stopped? Is that maybe where your guest started talking and it was just really dull? It didn't understand podcasting in general. You can see, or maybe it's because, again, you said it's going to be about YouTube, and then we start talking about MP3s or something, So I think YouTube is highly effective at helping you to see these trends right out in front of you. They make it so easy. Some of these other programs and platforms make it so difficult to actually interpret the analytics. Like, I don't know anybody. Do you have a Facebook ad account? Anybody? Those analytics are complicated, YouTube makes it very simple to get started.
So on like podcasting, our normal strategy is like a 15-second teaser, which will come from, it's like a 17-second or less teaser that on this episode, it was you. My listener already heard it. I don't personally know what it is because my team's going to find it, but there's going to be a teaser, and that teaser is going to go into my pre-recorded intro. My intro, my goal is 15 seconds. So it's 17 seconds or less of you, 15 seconds of the music and my voiceover artist. And then it's just me coming right in and trying to answer the question as soon as possible. We're going to talk about YouTube today. And then it'll be the interview and the end, we have a little outro. I've heard that with YouTube, and who knows if that's the perfect way. That's the way I like to do it for podcast. But I've heard with YouTube that sometimes instead of having that voiceover artist, you should have what do they even call it? Dang it. I can't even think of the freaking name. Oh man, what is it? It's like cartoon. It's an animated logo. Yes. Thank you. Animated logo. So I've heard that you're not supposed to have an intro. You're just supposed to have a quick animated logo because you could lose people if you have even a 15-second intro sometimes. Is that what you found?
Yes and no. I mean, I think we've talked about a lot of really technical stuff today, right? Transcriptions, subtitles, reach, intro formulation. But one of the reasons I love podcasting, I love YouTube, is it's very creative. There's a design element. And I used to think of design as like putting couches in the right place and having curtains at the right window with the right color that matches. But it's so much more than that. There's so much design that goes into a show. I don't necessarily think that there's a wrong answer as far as what you do in your intro. I think that on YouTube, I think it's a good idea to try different things, but I think your intro is really solid, Adam. You don't want to have a long, drawn-out intro, and you also got to remember that YouTube is a very visual format. You don't want to just post up an audio WAV form or an audiogram on YouTube and expect it's going to do great. I think that people on YouTube expect a higher quality of video. And anecdotally, I listen to almost all of my podcasts on YouTube. I don't really use iTunes or Spotify. I listen to them on YouTube, so I'll get the video. And I used to listen to Joe Rogan all the time. I don't listen to it anymore because it's not on YouTube. So it's just a really interesting and explorative platform. And it just opens up a lot of opportunity. And the other thing, we didn't even talk about this, Adam, I'm getting a little bit off topic though, is that one of the reasons I love YouTube is that the videos, like people can find videos that you recorded years ago and they can watch them. I just don't see that as often in podcasting, although we could probably record an entire episode on search engine and the way that podcast is impacting search now. There's some really cool things. I think Google, if you do a Google search, it used to not have a category for podcasts. Now we're seeing that. So that's kind of changing. But again, one of the other big values I like with YouTube is if you're setting up a good video, and it's optimized for search. People can find it years down the road, and it can be really impactful.
Yeah. Mark, you've been invited on a lot of other people's podcasts and YouTube channels. When you go on those YouTube channels and you're a guest on their show, how often are they reading a bio of you? How long are they taking that, like the beginning stage of the YouTube video? Are they actually reading off like a bio of you when you're on there? And is it the right move? Do you do that when you interview other people?
Yeah. So I don't read bios. Well, let me put it this way. I read the person's bio before I sit with them, and then I take out 3 quick points. I don't like to just read out the kind of a manufactured bio. I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with doing that, but my reasoning for not doing it is I want to get right into it. And a lot of times when you're bringing a guest on, they're going to be bringing some of their community with them. And their community already knows what this person's about. I think my goal when I'm doing an interview or connecting with someone is to try to get them to say something they've never said before. And if you started out with just reading a bio that they've heard 100 times before, I just don't think it hits the same way. The flip side, though, is that if you're reading someone's bio, you're reading exactly what that guest wants the audience to know. So there's pros and cons there. There's pros and cons.
Yeah. For me, when we work with somebody, I'm like, why are you reading like a 2-minute long bio? It's just, let's just get into the content. It goes back to tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. It's like, give them the big promise as soon as you can so that they know why they're even sticking around. Sometimes we've had clients that just, when they're reading those bios, it takes 5 minutes before anyone knows, what am I going to get from this? Like, why do I care that this person graduated from Harvard? Why do I care that? So at any rate, I'm glad you said that. So you don't ever do it, but you do pull out 3 key things. You read it, but you don't read it live. You just pull out like 3 key things. You said, my goal is to get them to say something that they never have said before. What 2 things do you do to make sure that that happens? How do you make sure that happens?
Yeah. So preparation is part of it. So I'll generally listen to maybe a podcast or 2 that they've been on. Maybe I'll listen, if they have a podcast, I'll listen to the first episode. Sometimes it kind of depends on time and whatnot. I read the bio, that sort of thing. But what I found, Adam, particularly with big, very successful speakers, Pat Flynn's, David Meltzer's, Jasmine Starr's, Evan Carmichael's, Gary Vaynerchuk, who's not been on my show, but Gary, I'm working on it. One of the things you'll find with these great speakers is they have these 3, 4, and 5 minute little speeches that are categorized in their brain. They might have 50 of them. And when you ask them a certain question, they go right to that prefabricated speech that they have in their brain. So what I try to do is I just try to interrupt that pattern in some way, because again, this is something I like to do. When listening to someone's podcast or listening to something they've guested on, they're going into the speech again. And so what I'll do is I'll listen to that little speech and I'll say, how can I take this a step further? I don't feel like we got enough clarification on that speech. Maybe there's something that they weren't super clear on, right? Like maybe you hear Gary Vaynerchuk go into is, I passed on Facebook and Uber twice. Like how many times have you heard Gary Vaynerchuk say that, right? So let's go a little bit deeper. Like, why did you pass on it? What did you not see? What do you wish you would have seen? So anyway, trying to identify this guest has several different monologues that they like to go into. How can I help them take that monologue a step further?
Yeah. What do you think are like the biggest, most impactful pieces that have allowed you to get 600,000 views on YouTube?
So the most important is perseverance. You got to keep posting. My first, I think I'm over 100 videos now, but like Roberto Blake, and I mentioned him earlier, says, until you've made 100 videos, you can't say anything, right? Because it's perseverance is the big one. This is my perspective on basically everything I do is I want everything that I do to just be a little bit better than the last time I did it. And that's how I started with video editing. I didn't know anything about video editing when I started a few years ago. And I just said, each video that I edit, I'm going to add 1 extra feature. When I started on YouTube, I said, each YouTube video, I'm going to add 1 extra concept, whether that's a tag or using the right app or whatnot. So the way that I tackle it is just start and just try to focus on making each video, each episode, just a little bit better, just a little bit better. And that compounds over time in amazing ways. And I'll give you just one quick example. I had one video that reached 500,000 people, very, very successful video. And it wasn't successful at first. I posted the video, it was dead. It reached 50 people or something like that. Nothing crazy. I went in a week later and I made some adjustments. I changed up the title, I changed up the description, flipped around a few of the tags, and all of a sudden, Google or YouTube just said, this video is highly valuable. And they just started promoting it, showing it to everybody. So even sometimes you think that there's a video that was really good, you can always go back in and tweak it a little bit. And
That's good.
It can take off.
I like that. Last question. I'm curious about repeating content. Is like with your 100 videos or podcast episodes, either one, are you thinking to yourself, I want to make sure that I never talk about this subject again because I've already talked about the subject once? Or are you like, speaking of Gary Vaynerchuk and him passing on Google or whatever, are you making sure to say the same thing all the time? Or is it somewhere in the middle? What's kind of the balance and why?
So I'm never worried about repeating the same thing twice. Just because I think when you're saying the same thing, it means that you're staying true to your niche, right? And this is something that I struggle with. I'm fascinated by so many different parts of digital media and digital communication that I'm touching on a lot of different topics. 1 week it's podcasting, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. So I'd like to touch on a lot of different topics. But I think that if you're hitting on the same topic, it means it really starts to resonate with your audience. Right. And I think that's why Gary does that, right? Because he knows that this story works with his audience. I'm going to keep hitting on this point, right? The other thing you got to consider is you're always getting new listeners and viewers. There's also a chance that someone maybe missed that particular episode and now you're bringing it up again. You can also develop these spider webs. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about podcasting on YouTube. But if you want to know how to break down your entire YouTube video, go watch this video. So you can kind of create this kind of spider web of ideas.
Good stuff. It's like calling back to old episodes or sometimes future episodes. All right. So it is Mark Savant Media. That's where you go to check out his company. We've got the link already in the show notes. It is additionally the After Hours Entrepreneur podcast. You can find that literally by scrolling down or anywhere that you listen to podcasts. And Mark, thank you for jumping on. We'll put your contact and your handles down below. Really appreciate you. You spent a lot of extra time. We don't usually go this long with our guests, so really appreciate you diving into so much different detail about like, oh man, there's so many takeaways that I've got here. It's the reasons why you like YouTube. You talked about TubeBuddy, which for A/B testing and for different thumbnails, we'll put that in the show notes. Talked about verticals, and you talked about how it's now like instead of 30 seconds, they're letting you do 60 seconds. Reels, stories, Instagram, LinkedIn. Talk about making content because people are asking questions. I've had an episode where we literally talk about questions equal content. We make those questions into content. People already want it. Talked about long form, short form interviews, the 3 components that you need in your copy: hook, short explanation, call to action. Make sure we know what's in it for them. Do you post the same content across different places? You said yes. I wish we got into hashtags more. The subtitles. We talked about keywords, making sure you were using that in the first 30 seconds, making sure that we get into we do the intro right after the video.
Yes.
I talked about guest bios, the intro, outro, the YouTube being a different introduction, and that your goal is to get your guest to say something unique, something that they haven't said before. A lot of good takeaways. I really appreciate you. I'll let you go. Thank you for coming on, and I hope the listener follows you and gives you a rate and review.
Yeah, love it, Adam. Love speaking with other agency owners. And I just want to say to everyone, when I'm listening to Adam talk about all the different things we talked about today, I'm like, we covered a lot. We covered a lot. So listen, if you have a question we didn't get to touch on, or you want to go deeper, go to Instagram, DM Mark Savant Media, keyword Adam. Mark Savant Media, keyword Adam. I want to hear your question. I want to help you. Keyword Adam. Go to Mark Savant Media on Instagram. Shoot me a DM. I got your back.
Boom. All right. I'll talk to you soon. We'll have you back on the show, I'm sure. See you, brother. You know, I really don't say this nearly enough. I don't mention this, and I feel horrible because it's a great resource for you to be able to take your podcast to the next level. And it's simply a free resource that I don't need your email or anything. It's just a podcasting course that I created that is ended up putting in the very first 6 episodes of this podcast. So if you haven't checked it out, definitely going to want to just check out those first 6 episodes, see how they can help you improve your podcast, get in front of more people, and have a better result where you're making more money through the podcast, etc. So much can happen after you listen through episodes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So if you haven't done it, go do it now. And by the way, if you're subscribed, you'll keep hearing more great content. So to those of you who are, I'll see you on the next episode.